Hello and welcome to the garden. It's a little bit breezy today, so I'm sorry if there's any wind noise on the mic. What I'm doing today, summer squash. I've got some ready to plant out. The winter squash were sown later and they're not ready yet, but the summer squash are looking quite nice and I think they are good to go. So this is Tromba d'Albenga. So Albenga, that's in the north of Italy. Some interesting plants coming from there, some very nice tomatoes, and this funky squash. This is largely used as a summer squash, although it will keep into winter, and it's got this curved shape, and yeah, it's very tasty. Slightly firmer flesh than a courgette. It's more closely related to the butternut squash, and I think you can see that certainly from the mature fruit when the skin goes beige and so on, but it's generally used as a summer squash and we really liked it last year. It was our first time growing it last season and it did very nicely for us, so we're going to grow it again this year. So I've got some of those. I've got some crookneck squash, one of the yellow crooknecks, and I've got some ordinary courgettes, Striato di Napoli. That's one we've grown many times before. I will probably be growing a new one next year just because the seed is now a few years old and I will replace it with new for next year. But that's a really great courgette. Pale striped fruit, and they're really great when they're small, of course. That's really when the courgettes are best. But that one, it will make an enormous marrow. But even when the fruit are big, they don't go soggy or poorly flavoured. It's quite good as a large fruited sort if you happen to leave one on there a little bit too long. And it doesn't take long for a small courgette to turn into a marrow, not when they're in full flow later on in the year. But anyway, on to these summer squash. I'm going to start with our old bathtub here. This is something we brought into use for this purpose last year. This is a nice warm wall. It doesn't get morning sun, but as we move into midday, this starts to pick up the sun. This is a really warm corner. The bathtub, well, it worked quite well last year. We filled it with all sorts of odds and ends. We didn't have much in the way of compost at that time, so I think we put sort of half composted vegetable waste in the bottom and layered it up with all sorts of stuff. Everything grew really well in there, and then we had chicory and some young onions. I've taken those already and it's now free to use again. I'm going to have a little look at the soil, see what sort of state it's in. I'm quite curious to have a root around in there, see how it looks, and then I'm going to get some horse compost on and some fish blood and bone, and then it should be good to go. Now, I don't have great access to this at the moment because I still haven't finished fixing the shed roof. In fact, I'm much closer to the start of that job than I am to the end. So we had a lot of storm damage. The roof is now gone from all of our outbuildings, but I need to get on and fix that. So I'm just having a little look at the soil condition. There's quite a few roots from various things. Most of that will be from the chicory. It's a little dry down here, but all of that vegetable waste appears to have decomposed quite nicely. Doesn't look too bad, but it will need a bit of a feed. It's had quite a few plants in it. So yeah, I don't think I've left any of the chicory stems in there. What's that? Oh, just roots, it's fine. Oh, you don't have to take the roots out of the ground. It's good to leave them in, I think. So, first some horse compost and then I think some fish blood and bone, and I don't want to plant into horse compost, so I will mix that in a little bit first. Being quite generous with this. This is good stuff. It's well rotted, and it's pretty well rotted when we get it, and then these have been hanging around for a little while now. Got this last autumn, so it's really quite pleasant stuff. There are a few lumps in it, but it breaks up very nicely, and we've never had any problems with this brand of horse compost. We get it at quite a reasonable price, bagged from a local store, and it's cheaper actually than a lot of bulk deliveries, or certainly cheaper than bulk bags. And yeah, it's good stuff, and it's easier for me to handle bagged like that than barrowing it around. That's a bit heavy work for the dodgy heart. So this stuff is great for me. Just spread that out reasonably evenly. And now I'm going to be quite generous with the fish bud and bone. These plants that are going in here, I'm going to put quite a few in, and they will appreciate the feed. Yeah, that's enough. Now I'll just mix that in with the top 6 inches or so of the soil, so that I'm not planting just straight into neat horse compost. Even though it's quite well rotted, that's not ideal. It's a bit too rich, I think. I will have to give this a good soak after I've planted up, because it's a little bit dry. Of course, even though we've had some rain recently, you get a rain shadow thanks to the wall. Right, it's not looking too bad. Nice. So I'll stick 3 canes in to start with. I've got some wires on the wall here, and I can tie in later on with those. I think I've got, what have I got? Half a dozen set out horizontally across the wall. So yeah, about there. So just give me something to tie the plants to until they get up to the first wire, because in a high wind the stems are a little bit vulnerable. Just some rough old bits of cane. This one must be a homegrown one. Well, it's got a natural curve in the stem there, so I'll plant it that way, make the most of that curve. That'll be absolutely fine. I expect they've got a lot of root. Yeah, they've got a little bit, just starting to wind around the bottom. I could have potted these on if I had a little bit more room for them. Well, I'll just tease that out, and actually that's not bad. It's remarkable how quickly the squash will fill a pot. Yeah, I think I'll take off those seed leaves now. They're not really very helpful, and I don't want to set that too deep. I don't want it. It can be just a little bit above the level. Level or just above is fine. I don't want to plant these deep. These are slightly prone to rots around the stem there, so all of the cucurbits are a little bit prone to that. So even though they do form potentially some new roots from the stem, it's not one of those that I like to plant any deeper. Oh, this is so loose in here now. I don't need the trowel. Oh, I don't need that in there. Oh, this one's got even more root. Yeah, that's not so good. These could have gone out a few days ago. They'd have been in slightly better condition with the roots, but I mean, it's not bad. But it is worth waiting until the conditions are right for them. They're not going to appreciate cold at all. And there is a bit of a breeze today, so I will just put a loose tie around this straight away. I don't want them getting battered here. That'll be fine. So now I've got this yellow crookneck, and you can see that there are young flowers starting to appear. You very often don't get those first fruits because you you have to have some male flowers out already when the females open, but I might get lucky with these. Now, this is a bushy plant. It's really not the ideal place to put it in here. I will put one somewhere else to make sure that I get at least one plant growing really happily, but I think I am going to put this in here anyway, and I'm going to cram 3 in here because I've got spare plants. I might as well use them. And I mean, this is a bushy plant, but it will sort of hang out over the side of the tub here in due course. You can see the stem's already angled there, so it's quite handy for that purpose. Now this is a much better root ball. This is just about ideal, I would have thought. The Tromba had a little bit too much root in there, but this is not bad. So in the corner here, yeah, that'll be fine. I don't mind cramming these in because the thing with summer squash is that in the height of the season you're getting far too many of them, but early on they're coming in dribs and drabs, so it's nice to have a good supply of plants to make sure we get a reasonable harvest early on. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just tie this in a little bit. I'm putting this cane in at an angle to avoid the root ball. I don't want a long cane here, but I'm just shoving that out of the way. I don't want to leave it sticking up where I'm going to stab my eyeball. But if I just tie this in a little bit, even just with the leaf there, it's just going to avoid that being buffeted by too much wind. While it gets itself established, stems are still a little bit delicate. Let's just see. Well, maybe I'll go around the entire thing. This would be easier without the gloves, I think. My chunky digits are not designed for fine work. Right, there we go. It'll just prevent any damage to the stem there. It is a bit breezy today. Right, I'm going to get 2 more of those in right here. As I say, it'd be potentially a little bit crowded. It does depend how these stems develop. Although they're bush types, they will grow out a little bit, and if I point the corner ones out of the tub and the other one right in the middle, it should be fine. Right, a drop of water and the bathtub is done. So next I've got my courgettes. This is Striato di Napoli. Nice looking plants. I'm very happy with these. They've got tons of flower starting to show. Now it's quite normal to get almost entirely male flowers early on, but I've actually got the first female there. You can always tell the difference. The female's got that small embryonic fruit just behind the flower, so that's really good to see. They're looking reasonably healthy. I've got these in 2-litre pots. They haven't been in there that long, but I have a feeling they're going to be rammed with root. You can see it's hanging out the bottom. So these have been sat on soil. That's why they've happily rooted through the bottom of the pot. And we've had these in our polycarbonate box where we've been able to put a lid on it if the evenings look a bit cold, but they should be quite happy, quite used to the temperatures now. So these are good to go. I'm going to plant them at the end of, well, this is one of our legume beds, so they're going to go in at the end of the peas here, and that'll be fine. But before I put them in, I want to do exactly the same as I did with the bathtub. I'm going to put some horse compost and then some fish blood and bone. This soil looks just a little bit dry and sad to me, so I will improve it a little before I plant these out. These really do appreciate quite a lot of organic matter. I don't need a full bag here. Now these will make quite big plants, but I am going to put 2 here. They can hang out of the bed on either side, it's fine. Again, I'll remove the seed leaves. They haven't been doing anything for quite a long time. Tired and yellow. Right, something like that will be fine. Yeah, it's a little bit deep. That's better. Right, time to see what the roots are like. Oh, well, actually, that's not bad. It's not too pot bound. I'll just tease these out where they've gone down to the bottom of the pot. Encourage them to get out into the soil here instead of just hanging out in that root ball. There we go. And that way, I think. Now this is one where I'm standing it up a little bit higher than the surrounding soil. On a little bit of a mound. because it's low down and it's a bit more chunky than those crooknecks. I'm not going to stake these or anything. They'll be absolutely fine as they are. Right, where did I put that? I think that will be perfect. Right, the soil's not too dry in the main beds, but I will give those a drop of water and they should be perfectly content in here. So that job is done. Well, that is my summer squash planted. They will give me plentiful harvests. We certainly don't need more plants out than that, I don't think. I do have a couple of spares. Maybe I'll find somewhere for them, or I'll find somebody else that would like them, but yeah, not bad. Before I go, let me show you something. This is nuts. Here we have an absolute carpet of poached eggplant, and this is all self-seeded. I put a few strategically positioned plants in last year, and of course they seed everywhere. It's worth bearing in mind if you want to put this plant in the garden, but the pollinators go absolutely mad for it. This is covered with bees. I must have half a beehive out here working these blossoms, and that is fantastic to see. Other insects like it too. The lacewings, I understand, really do like it. So this is a great plant to bring insects into the garden with. Well, those plants are a bit leggy and sad looking because they seeded everywhere along that bed, and they're coming up so thick together that they're not really growing properly, but they are flowering profusely all along the apples and the pears, and yeah, the insects are loving them. So we're not going to do anything with those for a while. We'll let the bees have their fun. Anyway, that is all for this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.